We use stale seed beds and inter-row tillage on the farm now. It's virtually something that we've reintroduced. It was a method used 30-40 years ago by the family before we had herbicides and good herbicides that would knock out the weeds. Everything was done mechanically or hand weeded. In recent years, those herbicides that we relied upon have become more and more resistant to different types of weeds. So we've gone back to trying to pre-germinate those weeds, knocking them out of the seed bed before we even plant with a total knockdown spray that of course don't have resistance, and doing that time and time again to reduce the overall numbers of weed plants in the bed to start with. And then we've had to go back to tillage to knock out the resistant weeds that are persisting through the crop. It doesn't matter how many sprays we put on some of these weeds, they're just resistant to the chemical and don't die. So we've had to go through with things like the weed fix and set up some machines ourselves, custom built some different things to go through and knock the weeds out of the crop for us. I think it's important these days, you know, we're looking more and more towards less tillage, taking chemicals out of our system. People are more and more aware of, you know, chemicals and some of the bad effects they are perceived to have. So, you know, we would like to try and head towards more of an organic type production. There are some limitations to using the stale seed bed methods and the inter-row cultivation. Most of those limitations revolve around the weather and having the right weather to do those things. Particularly if you want to spray off a seed bed, it's got to be dry, good weather. In southern Victoria here we get persistent rain often, and often you don't get a chance to get in to spray them off. And also with inter-row cultivation, if the soil's wet, it can clump. And if you do knock the weeds out, there is a chance you'll just be transplanting them from one spot to the other because of the moisture that's there still available. The weed doesn't die off, it gets a chance to restrike, I suppose, in a different area. The main benefits I find using the stale seed beds and the inter-row tillage approach are that we're not reliant on chemicals to solve the problems. We're not creating more resistance in the weeds. We're starting to claw back at some of the resistant populations and once again enable us to use chemicals where we really have to. But it's also, initially it may seem like it costs a little bit more to go out knocking those weeds out time after time to get rid of generations of weeds from the seed beds, but the alternative is having those germinate in the crop and not being able to control them properly, getting poor crops, competing for nutrient and food with the weeds, then having to send out, you know, massive crews of staff to hand weed those out of the crop, and it's a huge expense. So it's really a no-brainer for me.